Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Williams with Amy Williams Academy, and welcome to the Childhood Potential Online Montessori Conference. I'm so glad that you're joining me for help. My students are losing it, and so am I. Today, we're going to talk about some of the ways that we get in our own way and a tool that I think will be really helpful for you going forward, doing some self-reflection on what you do when things go sideways that don't really help it and what we could do differently. So when our children are having a hard time, when they're struggling, when we are struggling and having a hard time, some really clear things that we can do to make that shift and make that shift stick and stay, deepen our relationship with children, and give ourselves some grace and realize that we're human and we make mistakes too. So let's get going. So who am I? I'm Amy Williams. I'm an educator coach, a school leader coach, and also a family coach. I've been with Montessori schools and in the world of education for about 3 decades. And my original work and training is as a dance movement therapist and expressive arts therapist. And some of that background and experience weave together and fit perfectly in Montessori spaces. So I can't wait to share with you what I have to share today. Okay, so let's get to it. What is the dream? Well, you imagine a classroom that is peaceful, that is cooperative, there's kindness, there's concentration, there's deep work happening, there's deep satisfaction happening in all the people that you serve in your classroom. So children are connected to work, they're engaged with work, they're satisfied with their work, they're smiling, they're happy, they're content, they're kind with each other, they're helpful to each other, right? That's the dream. That's what we're hoping to get to, right? And sometimes the reality is things fall apart. Children fall apart, and so do we, right? There might be crying, there might be screaming, there might even be table flipping. Has anybody ever had that in your classroom? Or ignoring us when we're giving what we think is really simple direction or suggestion, recommendation. Yeah, when we feel like maybe they're not listening to us, or they turn and go the other way, or they say something back to us that takes us off guard, right? And we feel ourselves become dysregulated, right? Our children are dysregulated and we become dysregulated as well. So what do we do during those times when we feel like we want to scream, or we want to just cover our face, or we just want to step out of the classroom and sometimes not come back? All right. Some days we may feel like that. So let's take a deep breath and carry on. Okay, so let's start with some basic information that you probably already know about. I'm sure loads of people have heard about Abraham Maslow and the work that he and his team did in their research and data gathering, and what they realized about humans. So take a look at this. This looks probably similar to what you learned. Sometimes you'll see this in a pyramid, the hierarchy of needs, or the staircase of needs. Joanne Nordling, in her book Caring Discipline, describes the hierarchy of needs as a staircase. So that's kind of the way we're going to look at it today. But humans have needs that cross cultures, that cross communities, and they're pretty consistent, right? And we can see them in our classrooms as well, and for ourselves. So in our classrooms, our children exist, and so do we. So we could take a look at when the behavior starts to go sideways, what's the need that's not being met? And are there lagging skills to get that need met? Okay, so we'll start at the bottom. The first basic need is the needs for physical shelter, food, water. Is there someone to hold me, right? That's a basic need. Another need that is a step up from that is the need for security. Am I safe? Do I feel safe? Is this world and the people around me a trustworthy and safe place? Next is the need for belonging. Do I belong here? Are these my people? Do I feel like this is my place and I have have contributions to give here? So that's the sense of belonging. Then the need for being loved is right up there with it. And that's the idea of I'm loved and I am cared for just because I exist. Even if I make a mistake, I'm still loved. Even when I do something that's really what I think is amazing, I'm loved also. And in the in-between times, I'm loved and I know that. Right? Okay, so the next need is the need for competency. I have skills and I have abilities, and there's a place for me to contribute to my community. People respect me. I'm the best line leader. I can set up snack with the best of them, right? So think about all of these needs and how you see them unfolding and expressing themselves in your classroom space, right? Okay, and then the top one, Maslow would describe this as the top of the pyramid, and the idea that if you have all of these other needs met, you reach the top, the pinnacle, the idea of I like myself, I like other people, I am self-actualized. Okay, so this pyramid or staircase model is one way to look at it. So let's look at it in another way, right? A lot of people don't know this. You may know this already, but when I learned this, it shifted my idea about the pyramid model or the staircase model. And we can look at it like this in a circular way. And this type of way to look at it, this image is from Flora Sakut from the Gentle Revolution. But Maslow spent some time with a community, the Blackfoot Nation, and to observe their community. How do they get their needs met? What are their needs? And there was their great influence to his ideas going forward that the Blackfoot Nation didn't get a lot of credit for, didn't get any credit for. So I'd like to give them some credit. So the way that that community looked at the hierarchy of needs, or how individuals within the community get their needs met, is directly related to their connection to the community, right? So if you can imagine the pyramid with a golden thread going through it, and that golden thread being their connection to the other people in their community. I need food, I need water. How do I get those needs met? I could reach out to my community to get that need met. When other people need food, water, I'm a part of the community, I can assist and help as well. So there was a deep connection and back and forth, the give and take within the members of the community. So not only physical needs, but the needs for safety. We all keep each other safe. We all help ourselves, and we help each other keep our community safe. Love and belonging. Where is my place? I understand my place in this community in relationship to the others around me. I am my own person, and how do I fit in to this community? Right? And it goes on to each of the steps that Maslow would describe in his hierarchy of needs. The sense of esteem. What can I contribute? What can others contribute to me? Now, this one adds in a step around aesthetics, music, and art. That's near and dear to my heart. So that's another important need that we can think about when we're considering our classroom space and preparation of the space, right? Then self-actualization is really connected to the community actualization. If each person has their needs met and they're being the fullest expression of themselves, then others in the community can do the same. And as a whole, our community rises. Yeah. And then it goes on to contribute to the living world and a thriving ecosystem, which feeds into our basic physiological needs and around and around. So this is another way to look at it that I like to remember when I'm preparing myself and I'm supporting children in the classroom, and I'm preparing my space and my classroom space for children. Now, when we think about this, we can, give a nod to Ross Greene. And Ross Greene says, children do well if they can. So if you imagine they're doing the best they can to get their needs met with the tools that they have available to them at that moment. Same thing for us. We do well when we can, right? See, Ross Greene also goes on to say challenging kids are not always challenging. They're challenging only when the expectations placed on them outstrip their skills. So we can come at behavior that goes a little sideways in our classroom, and imagine what need are they trying to get met? How are they trying to get that need met? Is that working, or is it not working so well? Would we like to teach a different skill so that they can get their need met in a way that supports the community and supports themselves being that full expression on themselves? Deep breath. Okay, so we've talked about needs, and we've talked about sometimes our skills and trying to get those needs met just are lagging in a way, and that has to do with children in our community and also with ourselves too. So let's talk about sabotages, the way that we get in our own way, right? Sometimes the way that we're trying to get needs met and meet the needs of the community of children in front of us, um, we just struggle. So Joanne Nordling, in her book, Caring Discipline, Practical Tools for Nurturing Happy, Loving Families, Joanne describes this. And she, over her career and her years of observing and coaching families and working with children, she noticed a pattern. And she noticed the pattern of typical ways that adults get in the way when they're trying their best to help support children, right? And it is true. There are four, actually five of them that we'll talk about today. And as I describe them, I want you to think about which one rings true. Which one can you look at and go, oh yeah, that's me. Oh gosh, I'm so good at that one. That sabotage is my superpower. I'm so good at talking and talking and talking. I'm so good at it. I quickly step into that when I become dysregulated, right? You can also think about these sabotages and imagine, as we describe them more in depth, about your colleagues and the teaching team that works most closely with you. Does your co-teacher or your assistant teacher or your lead teacher have a sabotage that they're really good at? So it's a beginning of a conversation that you can have with the people that you work with to talk about, okay, how do I get in the way? What can I do differently? You can imagine them almost like mud puddles, right? We don't mean to, but we step in them and sometimes we slip and then we get covered in mud. Okay, we can wash the mud up, we can get out of that mud puddle, clean ourselves off and carry on. All right, so the sabotages, the mud puddles, here are the four basic ones, right? So as I'm describing them, imagine, does that sound like me? Okay, number one, the first one is procrastination. Interesting that we put procrastination first. We're not going to procrastinate. So procrastination looks like this. I'm just not going to worry about it right now, or, oh, that's not too bad. That's not so bad. Or I'm just really exhausted. I don't have the energy for that. Or I'll just deal with that later. I don't have time to deal with that right now, right? So that's procrastination. The next one is talking and talking and talking, where you continue to say words far beyond the time that, that your audience is still engaged, right? When your child or your children in your classroom have stopped listening and they're doing something else, or they're thinking about snack, or they're playing with their shirt, right? And we've lost the audience. And there we are, still talking, right? So instead of talking, we can carry out the correction, the guidance, the support with as few words as possible, and then we drop it. We don't mention it again. Yeah. Okay, so the next sabotage, the next mud puddle is forgetting to connect. And we'll talk more deeply about the specific type of connection that is really powerful. We'll get to that shortly. But when we forget to connect with children at times that are neutral, not when they're doing something that we're like, yes, please, more of that, or when they're doing something, no, thank you, please stop doing that. But the in-between times, are we noticing them? Are we smiling? Are we making some sort of connection, right? And the way that we each make connection during these times is going to look a little different. We'll get more into that shortly, okay? But that's one when we forget to do that and we find ourselves only connecting when things are going sideways, then that can be a sabotage, right? Okay, next is the idea of negative scripting. When we hear the words that we say, and they're coming out of our mouth and we're saying no, or stop that, or the tone of our voice is negative, or the way we hold our body is negative, the specific words that we use are negative. So instead of that negative scripting, we can pause, stop, rescript, say something different, make our body into neutral position, notice our tone, and use positive descriptions and tone and body when talking about and to the children. Okay, let's get more in depth with this first one, procrastination, right? So we might say to ourselves, well, that's not so bad. I'm just going to let that one slide. Or, everything's going so well. I just don't want to get into an argument. I don't want to start this. I'm tired. It's almost the end of the day. They're about to go home anyway. And then we don't address the behavior, right? Okay, so instead of just letting it slide, we want to be sure to act the first time we see the behavior, right? Now, the tricky piece of this is that we don't want to be that nag, 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 nag when children are having many struggles. Certainly we want to pick and address behaviors when they have an impact on the community or an impact on the child or on you that is problematic, right? And remember, if we are good at procrastination and we're also good at negative scripting, we want to be mindful of the words that we use and are they positive? Not only the words, but our tone and our body as well. Okay, the second common one is talking and talking and talking. I ask you to because, and here's another thing, and this is the reason why, and then we go into a whole paragraph about why your boots and your coat need to be on the hook and in your cubby. Here's the reason why that we put the snack dishes in this bin and it goes over here. Or I feel like I've been talking to you, I've told you 5 times or 10 times about this, and we're talking on and on and on, and we've lost our audience, right? When our voice becomes a something that our children turn off, that's not a place where we want to go, right? So if you find yourself really good at talking and talking and talking to children, at children, when behaviors are sideways, let's pause a minute, and instead carry out the correction or the guidance or the support with as few words as possible, right? So, and as soon as the behavior shifts into something that is welcome and not bothersome in the classroom, we drop it. And we don't mention it again because it's done and it's over, right? And that could be hard when you find yourself having to redirect many times about the same behavior in a day. How can I say it in a different way next time with as few words as possible? Remember, children, when they are dysregulated, they're operating from the middle part of their brain. So the frontal lobe, which is in charge of logic, right, and can actually listen and comprehend and process information, it may not be online when they're dysregulated, right? Same for us too, right? All of this, same for us. So when we find that children are dysregulated, the fewer words we could use, the better, right? It supports their success in hearing and comprehending and carrying out what they plan to do. They'll be more successful. Yeah. We also want to remember their developmental phase. Where are they? How old are they? How much experience do they have? Are they struggling with speech issues to begin with, right? So depending on the child, you'll know how many words to use and how few words to use. Sometimes you might find that, okay, I've said this direction or this instruction or this guidance in a sentence that's this long, and perhaps the next time you say it in a sentence that's this long. And maybe the next time you go down to one word followed by no words and perhaps a gesture, right? Boots and coat and lunchbox hang in your cubby. Everybody, and you've said a whole paragraph, right? And there's a child who's not doing it. Okay. Abby, boots and coat, cubby, and still boots and coat are not in the cubby. So you might say, oh, Abby, boots and coat, and you gesture to the cubby. Maybe the next time you just point to the cubby and don't say anything. Now, this is a tricky one. And I got to tell you, I've had lots of experience in this one because this one's my superpower. I'm so good at it. I've made a career out of it. Okay, so here is the third common one. And this one is the forgetting to connect, right? Oh yeah, you're here, right? We have lots of children in our classroom. And how often do we make eye contact? Do we smile? Do we make some sort of gesture or words or no words, but we connect with children to let them know, I see you. I'm glad you're here. You're in my classroom. We are here together in our classroom. All is well. Sometimes it might be that we miss doing that, right? Excuse me. So we want to do these kinds of things, these kinds of positive connections at neutral times 4 times to 1. So if you find yourself having to offer, a connection or a correction, and it might be a little tense, then notice, okay, I need to come back and connect with this child during neutral times 4 times or 5 or more. And we'll talk about that specifically shortly. All right, now here's the 4th one. This one is negative scripting. So, why don't you ever, or oh my gosh, the laundry basket is right there. So with our words, and don't forget, our tone can come across as negative as well, as can our body and our facial expression. So if you notice that your facial expression might be like this, or if you have a colleague that you really trust to let you know, hey, what's my face look like? Or please let me know when my face gets like this so I can relax my face, so I can tuck my wings, which means pull your shoulders back and down, and you imagine your ears going back so the muscles in your face relax. So instead of like this, you can shift, tuck your wings, pull your ears back, and it makes a huge difference. Right? You can actually start with your body when you're feeling dysregulated by doing that simple back and down, ears back. It makes a huge difference. Try it out. Okay, so this is negative scripting, right? With our body or mind, or our body or our tone or our words. Why don't you just, or you never, or you always? So instead of that, what you can do is focus on the positive descriptions. What can they do? What is the behavior that you want to see? Matched with your tone. Is it a positive tone that relays, I believe that you are competent to do that. I know that you can do that, right? So use that positive tone, positive words, and positive descriptions when you're talking to the child and also about the child when you're connecting with your colleague about what's happening in the classroom space and what you can do differently or the same. You may think that you might be out of earshot from the child, but you may not be, right? We could be out of earshot from a particular child we're talking about, but we may be within earshot of another peer or another person in the community, right? And that kind of sets up a negative tone for the community, right? That's a tricky one. I mean, when do we get to talk in private or out of earshot of children about children? That's always a tough one to figure out. But it's a great conversation to have with your colleagues about when to have conversations about this, about children's behavior. Even when you're having those conversations in private, it's important to notice your negative scripting about a child and how you can find the positive with your tone and your words and your body. Making that shift can be enormous in the way that you perceive the child's behavior, right? It helps us get to what is their lagging skill, what is their unmet need, and then we can begin to problem solve and help that child get the skills that they need, right? We want to believe that children do the best they can with what they got. So let's help them get those tools. Okay, now I told you there was 5. So this is the 5th one. That's it's kind of the superpower of all the superpowers because it influences all the others. And it's often the underlying base of all of the sabotages, all of the mud puddles, right? And that is my own needs. Am I taking care of my hidden unmet needs, right? Are you hydrated? Have you rested? Do you feel safe? Do you feel like you have a sense of belonging? Do you feel loved? And do you feel respected? Do you feel like you're able to be the full expression of yourself as you show up as the important adult in the classroom? Sometimes this hidden unmet needs, when we can address those needs, all of those other sabotages, those mud puddles, begin to disappear because we are getting our own needs met. We are connecting into our community to get our needs met. Can we notice that our colleague, our co-teacher is really having a hard time today? Perhaps we offer to bring them some water, or we offer, hey, I'm going to the coffee shop. Would you like some coffee? I'm coming back. Or do you need a snack? Or do you need a break? How can I help? What does support look like, right? Tapping into each other to find out what does support look like can be so helpful and useful to help all the adults in the environment get our needs met so that we can show up as the best person possible for the children. Yeah. Okay, so I've described them all. Which one sounds most familiar to you? Which one sounds like, oh yeah, I could teach a class on this, right? Procrastination is that one, about talking and talking and talking. I told you that one was my favorite. I'm really good at it. And what about negative scripting? Does that one ring true, or forgetting to connect? Are there times when you find, oh yeah, I haven't been tending to my own needs? So one or maybe two feel really familiar to you. Now get this, often the way that we sabotage our efforts in the classroom or sabotage our efforts in connecting and being with children is learned. So we learn to do this in our relationship with the important adults in our life when we were children, right? So think back. I mean, pause this if you need to, and then come back to it. Think about the important adults in your life when you were a child. What were their sabotages? What were their superpowers? What were their mud puddles? And does it look familiar? Do you do the thing and realize, oh my gosh, I sound just like my mom, or like my grandma, or like my second grade teacher? Well, there it is, right there in front of me. So from self-reflection and having a look at which one seems familiar and wow, where did this come from? Where did I learn this? We can address the behavior and decide, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore. Or that worked pretty well. I think I'm going to keep that skill, right? So think about that and notice where it comes from. Do that self-reflection, which can be hard and really uncomfortable, especially when we're trying to break those patterns and break those habits from what we experienced. And then how are we going to show up? How do we want to show up differently? That can be our own choice. Doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. And it's really helpful when you have another person who can come alongside you and help you with that, just like you can help them with theirs. All right, deep breath. Wings back, ears back. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the different types of behaviors that you may see in your classroom, right? We see all sorts of behaviors, and if you imagine, which category would they fit in? Let's come up with some language to use about this, right? So we've got welcome behaviors, and we've got neutral behaviors, and we've got bothersome behaviors. Now let's talk a little bit about language for a moment. You might say, or hear yourself saying, those are negative behaviors or misbehaviors, or those are great behaviors, or those are amazing behaviors, or good job. Okay, notice the language that we use to describe behaviors really shifts our own perspective and our own thoughts about what's happening in the behavior of the children in front of us and in the behavior of people around us, maybe ourselves too. Okay, so let's check it out. I was doing a class with a school here in Portland, Oregon a while back, and one of the teacher, and I was using like old school language of negative behaviors and positive behaviors, and she raised her hand to make a comment, and I noticed that she didn't say negative behaviors or positive behaviors. She used the words welcome behaviors and bothersome behaviors. And I just had to pause a second and say, okay, you just like, whoa, that's a new perspective for me. Thank you so much, because the power of language and the language that we use to describe things is important to take a look at. Yeah. So I invite all of you to notice, how do you describe the behaviors, right? It's behavior that we don't want so much sometimes. Well, let's call those, they're bothersome. They bother somebody. So let's call those bothersome behaviors. And then what about behaviors that we'd like to see more of? Let's call them welcome behaviors, right? So welcome behaviors are the yes, please, more of that, right? It pleases me, it's a joy for me, it pleases others, it's a joy for others. Yes, more of that. And then there are behaviors that we might say, no thanks. No more of that, please, right? So no thank you to that. You might feel annoyed or irritated by it. You have a problem with it. Others in the community might feel irritated or annoyed by this behavior. It's a problem for somebody. So those are some ways that we can describe welcome and bothersome behaviors. And you notice I've got neutral in here too, and you're wondering, what's that? So let's talk about it. So neutral behaviors are those behaviors that aren't welcome or not bothersome, but they're in between, right? So the child is doing their own thing. Nobody has a problem with it. They don't have a problem with it. Things are going well. Okay, everything's cool. Those are the neutral behaviors, and they can look like this. When a child has put their work away, they're finished, and there's a pause, and they're looking around to decide what to do next. That's a neutral time. Another neutral time might be when a child is doing their work at a table and there's a natural pause and they're looking around the room and they just are looking, right? And we might make eye contact with them. That's a neutral time. Perhaps arrival and dismissal. Those can potentially be neutral times, right? Depending on if it's a behavior that you're struggling with, or a behavior that is new that you want to reinforce and have, yes, more and more of that, please, right? But those are potential neutral times, right? Think about the other neutral times in your classroom. What about you? Where are your neutral times? What about your colleagues? Where are their neutral times? Often transitions can be neutral times when children are, say they're lining up to go outside, or they're transitioning from classroom to bathroom, or they're transitioning from this to the next, right? Those can often be neutral times. Can also be high intensity times for children who struggle with transition. So that's important to remember. So in the next week or two, start to notice and maybe even write down, when are those neutral times and where are those neutral behaviors that you see, right? Because get this, once you start to notice them, you'll see them all over the place. You'll see them all the time. It's wild. Okay, so along with this, let's remember that the behaviors you give emotional attention to are going to continue. Right? So think about, what behaviors do you want to see? Right? What are the welcome behaviors that you want to see more of? Right? So feel free to pause if you want to write these down. Okay. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit more about connecting at these neutral times. Right? Joanne Norling, in her book Caring Discipline, she talks about this as being one of the most powerful tools that we can use in the classroom, right? So when you have a child who's really struggling with a particular behavior or constellation of difficult behaviors, I did it again, of bothersome behaviors, okay, what is one of the first things you can do to help support this child during that time, around that time, right? We can increase the frequency of our connecting with that child at neutral times. Right? So here's the trick. It's not really a trick, but here's the nuance of connecting at neutral times. We want to keep it brief and ideally nonverbal, right? So each of us will have our own way of doing that. For example, I tend to be a winker. Turns out not everybody likes that. So you got to know the people that you're winking at, if that's something that makes a difference. That is a yes, please behavior that they would like to see, right? I'm thinking of particular of a child who they were in primary program, 3 to 6, and was growing up. I'd known this child for a long time, and the way that I connected at neutral times with him was a wink, and he would wink back sometimes. So we got that in our relationship. Well, something magical happened when this particular child moved from primary to elementary. I'm telling you, it was the first week he was in elementary. Classroom was right across the hallway from me in my office, and I happened to see him, and I winked at him. There was a long pause. He did not wink back. Long pause, and he said, "I don't want you to wink at me, Miss Amy." Okay. And it kind of hurt my feelings just a little bit because I thought, oh, okay, got it, got it. So I found a new way, and he found a new way back to me too. So next time I saw him at a neutral time, I just did my chin like this, and he did his chin back like that. And I realized, okay, that's it. I'm in again. So think about the ways that you connect with children at neutral times, and what's your way? A universal way that's commonly accepted by most people is a smile, right? So when you connect with that child during a neutral time, a smile may be all that you need. It's a universal sign of, I see you and I'm happy about that. I see you, I notice you, which is, wow, what we as humans really want, right? Okay, so keep it brief, keep it nonverbal. Now imagine and think about, feel free to pause here and write down in your journal or on your notes about, why do you think that this paying attention and connecting at neutral times makes a child feel unconditionally loved? So pause right now and write down a second. What do you think? Why do you think that this works? Well, Toni Morrison had some things to say about this. And this is one of my favorite quotes, and I try to carry this with me as much as I can. But Toni Morrison says, when a child walks into the room, your child or anybody else's child, do your eyes light up? That's what they're looking for. So think about the times that you make eye contact with a child at neutral times. And do you light up, right? You don't have to jazz hands light up, but you can brighten. And feel free to practice in a mirror if you want to, just to see what does it look like? And talk with a colleague that you really trust about this and say, hey, here's what I'm doing when I connect during neutral times. How does it land? What do you think? Is it too much? Right. So you can check it out if you're not sure, right? But think true, brief, and light up. So thank you so much for joining me today. That felt super short and super fast, but feel free to replay it again if you'd like. I wanted to share with you before I go, these are, I'm a children's book author too, so I have a series of SOCIMO books, which are social emotional books for children that, imagine they're like Grace and Courtesies in a book. How to make a friend. Whoa, what do I do with that big emotion? Consent, the whole idea about consent. How do you say yes? How do you say no? How do you listen and respect someone's yes or no? What if they change their mind? Do they have to change? It's all about consent. I feel really passionate about this one. So excited about that book. And then there's Rude, Mean, and Bully. What is that? The star of this book is actually the upstander. Here's my pen right here. And this book talks about the idea and the role of an upstander. How can you stand up for your friends or for your peers or for others when maybe their voice is shaky, or they aren't feeling safe or ready or have the skills to stand up when someone is saying something that's rude or mean, or they're in a bullying type situation. So learn about the upstander there. And then I've got the Spark, a creative adventure for teachers. And that's a blank journal with prompts, with tools that you can use. You can copy and print, cut and paste as much as you'd like. So the different sections are myself as an educator. Another section is with my colleagues. Another section is with my children in my classroom, and another section is with my families. So in this book are tools that you can use getting ready for a hard conversation, or keeping track of behaviors that you're watching in the classroom, tools that you can use to support children in your classroom, and how to have that conversation with your colleague. And what about me? What brings me joy in the classroom? So that came from lots of conversations from many of you looking for a place and that had tools and techniques, and a place to do some self-reflection that had a little accountability, a place to put it down in one place. So I made it for you. So there it is. You can get yours at amywilliamsacademy.com. And if you are a premium subscriber for the Childhood Potential Conference, you'll get a free digital copy of this. So that's me. Thank you so much for joining. Here are the places to follow me on social media. Would love to have you join me and follow along when I have a, oh my gosh, I just thought of that, or a resource to share, or something that's coming up. I'd love to keep you informed and keep the conversation going. So until next time, have a great one and good luck. Watch your sabotages. You can do something different.